Too much time off, Jennifer? We can't have that kind of dedication to personal matters. Benjamin Thorne's voice, laced with cruel amusement, echoed in my head, a jarring counterpoint to the sacred silence of my mother's funeral. He had just fired me, via email, while I was standing at the podium, a photo of my beloved mother, Olivia Adams, clutched in my trembling hand. It was 11:42 a.m. on October 27th, a Tuesday, and I was Jennifer Adams, 34, a senior data analyst at Apex Innovations in Portland, Oregon, delivering my mother's eulogy when the notification buzzed, shattering my world in a way I hadn't thought possible. My gaze flickered to my phone, tucked in my pocket, the screen briefly flashing a preview. Subject, important HR update, your employment. The timing was beyond callous. It was a deliberate act of malice. Benjamin, my direct supervisor, knew exactly where I was, what I was doing. He had personally approved my bereavement leave, albeit with thinly veiled annoyance. A collective gasp rippled through the small chapel as my voice, previously steady, faltered, catching on the name Mom. I didn't need to open the email to know its contents. Benjamin's prior condescending remarks and the sheer audacity of the timestamp told me everything. A searing heat spread through my chest. But I pressed my lips together, fighting the tremor that threatened to consume me. My mother, Olivia, deserved every ounce of dignity I could muster, even if the world around me was collapsing. I finished her eulogy, my voice a quiet, resolute monotone, focusing on the loving memories rather than the fresh wound Benjamin Thorne had inflicted. As I stepped down from the podium, my best friend, Elaine Thorne, Benjamin's daughter, rushed to my side, her face a mask of concern. She knew something was terribly wrong, but even she couldn't fathom the depth of the treachery I had just endured. I was not one for dramatic outbursts. My strength lay in observation, in the meticulous analysis of patterns, in seeing the forest and the trees in a sprawling data set. As a senior data analyst at Apex Innovations for over 12 years, my reputation was built on quiet competence and unwavering loyalty. I was the one who could sift through millions of data points to find the anomaly, the hidden correlation, the overlooked detail that would save the company millions or unlock a new market. My colleagues often joked that if a single byte of information was out of place anywhere in Apex's vast digital ecosystem, I would find it. When Benjamin Thorne, barely 40, was brought in 2 years ago as the new head of data analytics, replacing my longtime mentor who had retired, there was a palpable shift. He was charismatic, loud, and obsessed with optics, often taking credit for my team's breakthroughs. Yet I tolerated it, maintaining my composure. My dedication to Apex ran deep. I had foregone numerous lucrative offers from rival tech firms, choosing stability and the comfortable challenge Apex provided. My mother, Olivia, a single parent who had worked tirelessly as a librarian, had instilled in me the value of loyalty and hard work. Her wisdom had always guided me, shaping me into a person who found strength in resilience, not rage. After the funeral, as the mourners dispersed, Elaine led me gently away, her arm linked through mine. "Jen, what happened? You looked like you saw a ghost." I handed her my phone, opened to the email from Benjamin Thorne, dated 11:41 a.m. PST. It was curt, brutal. "Due to recent performance and attendance concerns, your employment with Apex Innovations is hereby terminated, effective immediately. Your final compensation details will follow. Please do not return to the premises." My sick leave, approved bereavement leave, all condensed into attendance concerns. Benjamin had even added a smiley face emoji in the original email body, quickly edited out by HR, but the screenshot was already on my personal drive. I simply nodded, my face impassive, my mind already calculating. "It's just as it reads, Elle. He fired me." Elaine gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief, tears welling up. "He what? During Mom's funeral? That's evil!" Elaine and I had been inseparable since kindergarten. Her father, Benjamin, was always a secondary figure in her life, often away on business trips, perpetually busy. Her mother, Catherine Hall, was the CEO of Apex Innovations, a formidable woman who had built the company from a small startup into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Catherine was a workaholic, but she genuinely cared about her employees, a stark contrast to her son-in-law. My connection to Elaine meant I had grown up visiting the Thornhall household, often sharing dinners, witnessing the quiet tension between Benjamin and Catherine, who clearly tolerated him more than respected him. My professional journey at Apex had been a testament to consistent excellence. I started as a junior analyst, rising through the ranks, spearheading projects that increased operational efficiency by 18% and identified a fraudulent invoicing scheme that saved Apex an estimated $7.3 million 3 years prior. My meticulous nature extended beyond work. I had always been diligent, almost obsessively so, about backing up my work, my communications, and keeping detailed records. It was a habit born from years of dealing with complex data and the occasional need to prove my findings. The real shift began when my mother was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease 6 months prior. Her health declined rapidly, requiring frequent hospital visits and eventually, full-time care. I had faithfully balanced my demanding job with her care, often working late nights from the hospital bedside. Benjamin, initially sympathetic, grew increasingly resentful of my approved absences, despite my always completing my work remotely and on time. "Your priorities seem misaligned, Jennifer," he'd remarked 3 weeks ago during a virtual team meeting. "Apex demands 100%, not 90%, he added, a pointed look aimed squarely at me. I'd simply thanked him for his feedback, my expression unreadable. I should have seen the signals: his thinly veiled contempt, his sudden interest in my sick leave records, his inexplicable delay in approving critical project phases, until I was back in the office. The day after the funeral, numb but clear-headed, I began to process the firing not as a personal slight, but as a data problem. My mother's words, "Karma sometimes needs a little push, my dear," echoed in my mind. Benjamin had left too many digital breadcrumbs. I had, out of habit and a deep-seated need for thoroughness, archived every performance review, every email, every project brief, and every commendation I had ever received. My personal cloud storage was a fortress of documentation. More importantly, I had access to a wealth of Apex's internal systems data that even after termination lingered in my memory banks, patterns I couldn't unsee. My investigation began subtly. I started reviewing past project reports, specifically those Benjamin had led or taken significant credit for. As a senior analyst, I had been privy to more comprehensive datasets, often flagging minor inconsistencies that Benjamin had dismissed as noise. Now, those noises began to form a dissonant chord. For instance, a vendor, Stellar Solutions Limited, had received an unusually high volume of contracts over the past year, often bypassing the standard bidding process. Their invoices, which I had briefly seen in passing during a quarterly review, contained suspiciously rounded figures, lacking the granular detail typical of external service providers. My deep dive revealed a pattern. Stellar Solutions was awarded 5 major contracts totaling $1.7 million over the past 14 months. A quick public record search, leveraging my skills in open-source intelligence gathering, uncovered that Stellar Solutions had been incorporated only 18 months prior, with a single anonymous director listed. This detail alone was a red flag. Digging deeper into Apex's internal financial logs, I cross-referenced the payments to Stellar Solutions with Benjamin's expense reports and travel records. It wasn't a smoking gun yet, but the trajectory was clear. Benjamin Thorne was systematically siphoning funds from Apex. I didn't confront Benjamin. Confrontation was his language. Strategy was mine. My patience, a trait often mistaken for passivity, became my greatest weapon. I meticulously built my case, compiling a comprehensive digital dossier. I retrieved archived emails between Benjamin and other team members, where he subtly coerced them into signing off on Stellar Solutions invoices. I found discrepancies in time allocation for projects, where my team was performing work attributed to this phantom vendor. Every piece of data was precisely documented, time-stamped, and cross-referenced. My specialized knowledge as a data analyst was invaluable. I knew where the weak points in Apex's internal financial auditing system lay, vulnerabilities Benjamin had likely exploited. I recalled specific coding anomalies in some of the financial reporting scripts Benjamin had overseen, which, when analyzed, could mask smaller recurring outflows. This wasn't just about Benjamin's greed. It was about his calculated abuse of trust and his profound arrogance. He believed no one would scrutinize his actions, especially not the quiet analyst he had so cruelly dismissed. My network of support, however, was stronger than he knew. Elaine, furious at her father's actions, proved an invaluable, albeit distressed, ally. She knew details about Benjamin's personal spending habits, extravagant purchases, new luxury cars, an unexplained influx of cash into his personal accounts that correlated perfectly with the outflow of funds to Stellar Solutions. More critically, Elaine knew her mother, Catherine Hall, the CEO, would not tolerate such blatant corruption. Catherine valued integrity above all else, and Benjamin's actions struck at the very heart of Apex's corporate values. I carefully explained my findings to Elaine, emphasizing the irrefutable evidence. I said calmly, I need you to take this directly to your mother, not as a distraught daughter, but as a concerned witness. The execution of my plan was precise, timed to coincide with Apex's quarterly board meeting. Catherine Hall, armed with my meticulously compiled report, initiated an internal audit of Benjamin's department. The audit was swift and brutal, leveraging the very data I had structured and presented. Benjamin, caught completely off guard, initially dismissed it as a witch hunt by disgruntled former employees. He laughed, truly laughed, in Catherine's face when she questioned him about Stellar Solutions' lean-ted, claiming the vendor was vital and my data flawed. His arrogance was boundless, his self-destruction inevitable. The revelations came in a cascading torrent. My dossier, a digital masterpiece of forensic accounting, detailed 2,347,832 in fraudulent invoices paid to Stellar Solutions Limited over the past year and a half. The CEO's internal investigators confirmed that the listed director of Stellar Solutions was a shell corporation, traceable directly to a post office box Benjamin controlled. They also discovered a series of illegal kickbacks from other vendors, amounting to another $985,000, funneled through the same intricate web of shell companies. His attendance concerns about me were a smokescreen to eliminate anyone who might uncover his schemes. The irony was palpable. Benjamin's own dismissal email, time-stamped during my mother's eulogy, became a key piece of evidence. It solidified his motive. A desperate attempt to silence a competent analyst who was too close to his illicit activities. The CEO, Catherine Hall, didn't just fire him. She orchestrated his public downfall. At the board meeting, with legal counsel present, Benjamin was confronted with irrefutable proof. His attempts to discredit me, to claim I was simply a disgruntled former employee with an axe to grind, fell flat against the mountain of evidence, most of which he himself had inadvertently created or approved. His own words, his own laugh, were now the very chains binding him. The climax unfolded in Catherine Hall's opulent office, 2 weeks after the funeral and 1 day before the police were officially notified. Benjamin Thorne sat across from me, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead, his usual smug grin replaced by a frantic tremor. Catherine Hall, regal and unyielding, sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, her gaze like steel. "Benjamin," she began, her voice low and dangerous, "Jennifer has laid out a case against you that is both compelling and meticulously documented. Over $3.3 million embezzled from Apex Innovations, and you fired her at her mother's funeral, laughing as you did it." Benjamin tried to bluster, to deny, to negotiate. "Catherine, this is insane. Jennifer is framing me!" "She's a good analyst, but she's emotional. She just lost her mother." He turned to me, his eyes wide with a desperate plea. "Jennifer, please! We can fix this. A misunderstanding. Apex can give you a severance package, a fantastic reference." I simply watched him, my expression calm. "The data doesn't lie, Benjamin. Your transactions to Stellar Solutions match your new luxury purchases, your vacation homes, the significant deposits into your offshore accounts. It's all there, cross-referenced, time-stamped. Even the smiley face emoji you thought you deleted from my termination email, I have the screenshot with the metadata." His eyes widened, realizing the depth of my preparation. He truly had no idea who he was dealing with. He collapsed into his chair, defeated. The larger scheme, as I had suspected, involved not just simple embezzlement, but a complex web of shell companies designed to funnel money offshore. money that was then partially laundered through other high-value assets. He had been planning this for years, systematically corrupting Apex's vendor system, slowly increasing the scale of his fraud. The resolution was swift and absolute. Benjamin Thorn was not only fired, but faced immediate legal action. Apex Innovations, under Catherine Hall's direct instruction, pressed charges for fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty. His personal assets, including the luxury cars and properties purchased with illicit funds, were frozen pending litigation. The reputational damage was immense. His career in corporate management was irrevocably destroyed. He was barred from holding any director positions and faced years of legal battles, eventually resulting in a significant prison sentence and a lifetime of debt. For me, the outcome was profoundly redemptive. Catherine Hall personally offered me not only my job back, but a promotion to Director of Data Integrity, with a significant raise and a mandate to overhaul Apex's entire financial oversight system. "Jennifer," she said, her voice filled with genuine respect, "you represent everything Apex stands for. Your integrity, your intellect, and your quiet strength are invaluable. You saved this company from a rot I didn't see developing under my own nose." I accepted, but not before negotiating a more flexible work schedule and the opportunity to build a new, highly specialized team focused on proactive fraud detection. I wasn't angry. I was empowered, a phoenix rising from the ashes of betrayal. My mother, Olivia, would have been proud. I often thought of her quiet strength, her unwavering belief in justice. "Karma sometimes needs a little push," she'd say, "and a thorough paper trail doesn't hurt." I learned that dignity in victory, just as in grief, comes from upholding one's values. Benjamin Thorn underestimated my quiet competence, mistook my composure for weakness, and believed his arrogance was a shield. He didn't know that patience, sharpened by pain and guided by an unwavering moral compass, was the most potent weapon of all. My new beginning at Apex wasn't just a job. It was a testament to resilience, a quiet affirmation that justice, meticulously planned and calmly executed, always prevails. The new corner office, overlooking downtown Portland, felt oddly quiet. It was now late November, barely a month after Olivia's funeral, and the scent of fresh paint mingled with the faint, lingering aroma of Apex Innovations' corporate polish. My new title, Director of Data Integrity, came with a heavier weight than I had anticipated. The initial euphoria of Benjamin Thorn's downfall had given way to the daunting reality of the task at hand, cleaning up a company-wide mess he had meticulously woven over years. A phoenix rising from the ashes, Catherine Hall had called me. But these ashes, I was discovering, were still smoldering. My first priority was establishing my team. I recruited Liam Miller, a sharp, ambitious junior analyst I had mentored years ago, and Maria Sanchez, a seasoned forensic accountant Apex had previously outsourced for complex audits. Both possessed the meticulous nature and keen eye for anomalies that Benjamin had so recklessly dismissed in me. Our initial mandate was clear: conduct a full audit of all vendor contracts and financial outflows from the past 3 years. This wasn't just about Benjamin anymore. Catherine wanted a clean slate, a surgical removal of all corruption, no matter how deeply embedded. Benjamin Thorn's legal battles were already well underway. The news had been plastered across local business journals, a stark, humiliating public record. His assets, including the luxury cars, the 2 vacation homes, and the funds in offshore accounts, were frozen by court order, pending criminal prosecution and civil forfeiture. Apex's legal team, led by the formidable Mr. Henderson, was pursuing the case with relentless efficiency. During a preliminary hearing, Benjamin, in a desperate bid for leniency, had hinted at a wider network, muttering about others who knew, and the way things were done. Mr. Henderson immediately flagged this to Catherine, who in turn alerted me. This was the first breadcrumb leading to the deeper rot. My mother's words echoed. "Karma sometimes needs a little push, and a thorough paper trail doesn't hurt." Benjamin, in his panic, was inadvertently providing more kindling for his own pyre, and perhaps for others. My deep dive began, not just into Benjamin's direct fraudulent transactions, but into the systemic vulnerabilities he had exploited. I knew the architecture of Apex's systems intimately. Benjamin's scheme with Stellar Solutions Limited had been audacious, but it relied on a weak link in the global procurement department's approval process, a loophole that allowed certain high-value contracts to bypass standard multi-level review if signed off by a specific set of directors. Benjamin, as head of data analytics, had manipulated the data to present his bogus contracts as mission-critical, pushing them through this less scrutinized channel. What I now needed to understand was if this loophole was unique to him, or if others had noticed and exploited it too. My team, Liam and Maria, were quickly up to speed. We started with the procurement system's audit logs. Focus on contracts approved through the fast-track channel, anything over $500,000 outside of core IT infrastructure, I instructed, sketching a flowchart on the whiteboard. Cross-reference with vendor establishment dates, payment patterns, and internal performance reviews. Our office, newly outfitted with cutting-edge analytical tools, became a war room. The silence was often broken only by the hum of servers and the quiet click of keyboards, punctuated by the occasional exclamation from Liam as he found a suspicious anomaly, or Maria's low whistle of surprise. Our first major discovery wasn't another Benjamin-level fraud, but a pattern of subtler, recurring discrepancies. A group of 3 seemingly unrelated consulting firms, Quantum Dynamics, Innovate Solutions Group, and Synergy Tech Partners, had collectively received over $4.7 million in contracts over the past 2.5 years. Individually, each contract seemed innocuous, often under the $500,000 threshold that triggered more rigorous oversight. But the collective sum was staggering, and the nature of their services was suspiciously vague, often described as strategic optimization or market foresight. My open-source intelligence skills, honed over a decade of data analysis, immediately kicked in. A quick search revealed that all 3 firms shared a common legal address in a remote industrial park in Delaware, a known haven for shell corporations. More disturbingly, their listed directors often appeared to be the same individual, recycled under slightly altered names. This was the work of someone far more sophisticated than Benjamin Thorne, someone who understood how to exploit the system without drawing overt attention. Benjamin's actions had been brazen. This was surgical. As we dug deeper, the new pattern started to point towards the global procurement department itself. Specifically, a name started to surface repeatedly in the approval chains for these suspicious contracts: Ramon Valenzuela, the head of global procurement. Ramon was a longtime Apex veteran, a man in his late 50s, known for his affable demeanor and his old-school approach to business. He had always been perceived as a loyal, if somewhat inefficient, manager. But the data was painting a different picture. Valenzuela's sign-off was invariably the final one on these dubious contracts. Often overriding junior procurement officers' flagged concerns, which he'd dismiss as overcautious or lacking vision. I remembered Ramon from my early days at Apex. He had been close to my former mentor, the one Benjamin replaced, and had often spoken highly of Benjamin's innovative drive when he first arrived. This new layer of potential corruption was far more intricate, deeply woven into the fabric of Apex's vendor ecosystem. It wasn't about a single rogue operator like Benjamin, but possibly a network that had systematically bled the company for years, using Benjamin's public-facing fraud as a convenient distraction, or perhaps even as a test run. Resistance to our audit began to surface. When Liam requested access to historical vendor performance reports from Valenzuela's department, the response was slow, then evasive. Proprietary information. Currently undergoing archiving. Resource constraints. Valenzuela himself became noticeably cooler, his usual warm greetings replaced by curt nods. He even tried to schedule a meeting with Catherine Hall, presumably to complain about my overly aggressive audit methods. But Catherine, armed with my preliminary findings, calmly rebuffed him, reminding him of Apex's zero-tolerance policy on corruption and her full support for my team. "Jen, this feels bigger," Elaine confided one evening over a rare dinner, her eyes tired. Benjamin's trial was consuming her mother, and Elaine was struggling to reconcile the father she knew with the criminal being exposed. Dad's lawyers keep trying to leverage some information about old alliances and unwritten rules to cut a deal. He's talking about how everyone did it in the past, implying it was just accepted. Mom's furious, of course, but it makes me wonder, was there always this undercurrent? Elaine's casual insights, gleaned from her father's frantic, self-serving ramblings, were invaluable. They corroborated my data, suggesting a deeper, more historical pattern of malfeasance. The old alliances and unwritten rules Benjamin hinted at were now starting to materialize as concrete data points. We discovered that the 3 suspicious consulting firms, Quantum Dynamics, Innovate Solutions Group, and Synergy Tech Partners had been regularly billing Apex for strategic advisory services since early 2018. Over this period, they had funneled an estimated $8.9 million out of Apex. The services they supposedly provided were consistently intangible, without clear deliverables or measurable impact on Apex's bottom line. Their invoices often showed suspiciously rounded figures, similar to Stellar Solutions, but cleverly diversified across multiple small contracts to avoid scrutiny. My team uncovered a critical piece of evidence: a series of internal emails from early 2018, just after my mentor's retirement, discussing a proposed vendor efficiency overhaul. These emails, buried deep in archived corporate communications, detailed a new streamlined approval process championed by Ramon Valenzuela. This new process, while ostensibly designed to speed up procurement, inadvertently created the very loophole Benjamin had later exploited and that Valenzuela's network was still using. The timing was too precise to be coincidental. Valenzuela hadn't just used the loophole, he had designed it. The money trail for these new vendors led to a complex web of offshore accounts, but this time, not directly linked to Benjamin Thorn. Instead, these accounts had connections to a holding company based in the Cayman Islands, whose ultimate beneficial owner was masked behind layers of legal obfuscation. However, by leveraging our advanced data analytics tools and cross-referencing public records with fragmented financial data from Apex, Maria and Liam identified a recurring pattern: significant, unexplained personal deposits into accounts belonging to Ramon Valenzuela, often coinciding with large payments to the Cayman Islands holding company. The numbers were exact: 1,145,700 in deposits over 18 months. This wasn't merely a coincidence. It was a systematic pattern of kickbacks and embezzlement, far larger in scale and more deeply rooted than Benjamin's direct fraud. My initial findings had been a single thread. Now I was unraveling an entire tapestry of systemic corruption. Benjamin Thorn had been the loud, arrogant, visible tumor. But beneath him, a more insidious, silent cancer had been festering, patiently siphoning off Apex's resources for years. Ramon Valenzuela, the affable veteran, was likely at the center of this deeper conspiracy. He had established the infrastructure for the fraud, and Benjamin had merely become another opportunistic exploiter of a system already primed for abuse. My calm focus sharpened. This wasn't just about justice for Benjamin's betrayal anymore. It was about protecting the very integrity of Apex Innovations. The quiet analyst was now a strategic commander, preparing for a battle that would shake the company to its core. I knew this was just the beginning. The next moves would require even more precision, more patience, and an unflinching resolve to expose everyone involved, no matter their perceived standing within Apex. The forest was far denser than I had imagined, and I had only just begun mapping its hidden trails. The hum of the servers in my new office, once a quiet backdrop, now felt like the heartbeat of a ticking clock. My team, Liam and Maria, had pushed past the initial resistance from Ramon Valenzuela's department. His evasiveness, once a mere annoyance, had become a glaring data point in itself. Proprietary information, undergoing archiving, resource constraints. Each excuse was a layer of obfuscation I was determined to peel back. The forest was indeed denser than I had imagined, but with every digital leaf we turned, the hidden trails became clearer. Our next move was calculated, knowing Valenzuela would continue to obstruct direct access. I leveraged a seldom-used feature within Apex's older financial systems, cross-departmental expense reporting, which, for critical projects, bypassed immediate supervisory approval and went directly to a central financial ledger for internal balancing. It was a relic from a pre-digital era, designed for speed over rigorous oversight, and ironically, it was the very loophole Valenzuela himself had championed. My team meticulously sifted through millions of historical transactions, not just for the past 3 years, but stretching back 5, to the period just after my mentor's retirement, when Valenzuela's vendor efficiency overhaul had gone into effect. What we unearthed was damning. The 3 consulting firms, Quantum Dynamics, Innovate Solutions Group, and Synergy Tech Partners, were just the tip of a far larger iceberg. We identified 7 additional shell corporations, all sharing similar characteristics: vague service descriptions, suspiciously rounded invoices, and a common thread of shared legal addresses or virtual offices across multiple states, all linked to a network of offshore holding companies. This wasn't merely Ramon Valenzuela. This was a syndicate. He hadn't just created a loophole. He had orchestrated an entire system of parallel illicit procurement, designed to be almost invisible to standard auditing practices. The combined value of these fraudulent contracts over the past 5 years was staggering, an estimated $21.5 million. This was not a few opportunistic kickbacks. This was systematic, large-scale embezzlement. Ramon Valenzuela's personal deposits, which we initially pegged at $1.2 million, now totaled $3.7 million over the same period, meticulously timed to coincide with major payments to these shell companies. He hadn't just bled Apex. He had established a sophisticated, self-sustaining financial parasite within its walls. Benjamin Thorn, in his arrogant greed, had stumbled upon Valenzuela's network and opportunistically exploited the same vulnerabilities, a loud, clumsy echo of Valenzuela's quiet, methodical theft. Benjamin hadn't designed the system. He had merely used it, albeit in a way that drew too much attention. The network of old alliances Benjamin had hinted at began to crystallize. Valenzuela hadn't acted alone. While he was the mastermind, we found a pattern of certain mid-level managers in global procurement, and even a few in legal, who had consistently signed off on these dubious contracts, often overriding their subordinates' concerns. These individuals, whom I identified as facilitators in my report, weren't necessarily getting direct kickbacks, but they were enjoying accelerated promotions, inflated performance reviews, and preferential treatment under Valenzuela's patronage. They were complicit through willful blindness and self-interest. They had enabled the rot. My digital dossier, now expanded to a comprehensive 300-page report, was a masterpiece of forensic data analysis. It included every invoice, every internal communication, every approval signature, every public record search, and every financial transaction, all cross-referenced and time-stamped. Each piece of data was presented with irrefutable clarity, demonstrating a consistent, deliberate pattern of fraud. I even included a detailed timeline showing how Valenzuela's efficiency overhaul in 2018 directly opened the floodgates for this new wave of fraudulent contracts, complete with the original internal memos outlining the benefits of the streamlined process, a process that perfectly facilitated his illicit activities. The final act was set 2 weeks later, in Catherine Hall's executive boardroom. It was a Monday, 9:08 a.m. Ramon Valenzuela, unknowingly walking into his own professional execution, was under the impression it was a routine quarterly review. Catherine had arranged a smaller gathering than a full board meeting, but present were Mr. Henderson, Apex's head of legal, and 2 external forensic auditors, quietly observing. I sat opposite Valenzuela, a thick binder on the polished table before me, my expression as unreadable as ever. Catherine, her posture as sharp as cut glass, began. Ramon, thank you for coming. We're here to discuss some significant findings from Jennifer's data integrity audit. Her voice, usually warm, was now chillingly devoid of emotion. Ramon, initially affable, shifted uneasily. Catherine, of course. Anything for Apex. Though I must say, Jennifer's team has been rather intrusive lately, disrupting my department with excessive requests. He shot me a dismissive glance, his smile a forced grimace. Perhaps a new director needs to learn the Apex way before turning everything upside down. The Apex way, Ramon? Catherine's eyes narrowed. Perhaps you'd like to explain what the Apex way truly entails. She gestured towards me. Jennifer, if you please. I opened my binder. Mr. Valenzuela, my audit focused on vendor contracts and financial outflows over the past 5 years, particularly those approved through the fast-track procurement channel you implemented in early 2018. My voice was calm, clinical. We've identified a network of 10 shell corporations, including Quantum Dynamics, Innovate Solutions Group, and Synergy Tech Partners, which have collectively received over $21.5 million in payments from Apex Innovations for services that appear to be, at best, intangible, and at worst, entirely fictitious. Ramon's face drained of color. His casual demeanor evaporated, replaced by a flicker of fear. Shell corporations? Fictitious services? Jennifer, that's a wild accusation. These are legitimate consultants, vital for our strategic growth. His voice rose, a desperate tremor betraying his composure. The data suggests otherwise, I continued, unperturbed. Their listed directors are often the same individual, recycled under slightly altered names, operating from shared virtual offices. Their invoices lack granular detail, using suspiciously rounded figures. And perhaps most pertinently, Mr. Valenzuela, these companies funnel payments through a holding company in the Cayman Islands, from which we have traced significant, unexplained deposits, totaling $3,042,900 directly into your personal accounts, synchronized with Apex's payments. I projected a series of charts and graphs onto the large screen behind me. A timeline correlating Apex's payments to the shell companies with deposits into Valenzuela's bank accounts, overlaid with the internal memos he had authored promoting the vendor efficiency overhaul. The proof was undeniable, stark and meticulously visualized. Ramon pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly. This is insane. You're framing me! This is revenge for Benjamin, isn't it? He was your boss, and you're just a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. He turned to Catherine, his voice pleading. Catherine, this is a witch hunt. Jennifer's clearly emotional after everything she's been through. Catherine's gaze was ice. Emotional? Jennifer's report is a masterclass in forensic accounting, Ramon. Every detail is corroborated, every transaction traced. And unlike Benjamin, she provided the original, unedited documents. She paused, her voice hardening. Tell me, Ramon, how do you explain the memo from 2018 where you specifically advocated for the very streamlined approval process that allowed these fraudulent contracts to bypass standard oversight? A process that directly benefited your long-running embezzlement scheme? He started to sweat, his eyes darting frantically between Catherine, me, and Mr. Henderson. I was trying to improve efficiency. That process was approved by the executive committee at the time. Benjamin was involved. He knew about some of these vendors. He tried to deflect, to drag others down with him, the old alliances crumbling under pressure. Benjamin Thorne was an opportunistic exploiter of a system you designed, I stated flatly, cutting through his bluster. His actions were brazen, but your scheme was the deep systemic rot he merely exposed. You laid the groundwork, Ramon. Benjamin was a symptom, not the disease. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His frantic attempts to negotiate, to implicate others, to create chaos, fell flat. The evidence was too overwhelming, too meticulously assembled. He had underestimated the quiet analyst, believing her grief and composure were signs of weakness. He hadn't realized that the data she manipulated was also the very data that would unravel his carefully constructed deception. He didn't know that my mother's wisdom, karma sometimes needs a little push, was a principle I live by, buttressed by an unshakable dedication to a thorough paper trail. The resolution, like the investigation, was swift and absolute. Ramon Valenzuela was immediately escorted from the premises. Apex Innovations, under Catherine Hall's unwavering leadership, pressed criminal charges for fraud, embezzlement, and racketeering. His personal assets, including numerous properties, luxury vehicles, and the millions funneled into his offshore accounts, were frozen and ultimately seized. His career, built on decades of quiet deceit, was utterly destroyed. He faced a long prison sentence and crushing restitution, a fate far more severe than Benjamin's, reflecting the scale and duration of his corruption. The deeper conspiracy, the old alliances, also began to unravel. Based on my comprehensive report, Catherine initiated a company-wide restructuring of the global procurement department. Several mid-level managers were either demoted or terminated for their complicity and negligence, sending a clear message throughout Apex. Integrity was paramount, and willful ignorance would not be tolerated. The era of unwritten rules and shadowy favors was over. For me, this victory was not about triumph or anger, but vindication and profound purpose. Catherine Hall, her faith in me unequivocally cemented, formalized my role as Director of Data Integrity, granting me an expanded mandate. My team and I were tasked with not just detecting fraud, but fundamentally redesigning Apex's financial oversight and procurement systems from the ground up, integrating advanced AI and machine learning models for proactive anomaly detection. Jennifer, Catherine told me, her voice tinged with regret for her past blind spots. You didn't just save Apex millions, you saved its soul. You brought light into the darkest corners of this company. And for that, I am eternally grateful. My new beginning at Apex was more than just a job. It was a mission. My office, once a place of quiet observation, was now a command center for systemic change. I found a quiet strength in this purpose, a resilience forged in the crucible of betrayal and loss. My mother, Olivia, would have looked at the thriving ethical Apex and smiled. She would have seen the quiet analyst, once underestimated and dismissed, emerge not with a roar, but with the undeniable power of truth, meticulously documented and calmly delivered. Justice, I had learned, was not a sudden explosion, but a patiently constructed edifice, built brick by digital brick, until the walls of deceit inevitably crumbled. The forest was finally being cleared, and I, the quiet analyst, was now charting its future, ensuring its pathways remained clear and true.